Hello everyone and welcome to the round 3 wrap. Today I'm going to go through my AFL Supercoach review. It was a hectic week. My team basically got a bang average score of 1,768, top 49%. We were ranked 87,000th basically of the round, and our season ranking has dropped by 13,500. Yeah, it was annoying. So go through how the team did. Jack Sinclair, Jordan Clark. These two did really well. Jack Sinclair, he looks like he's just going to be around about that 120 mark. 114 against Brisbane. It's a good score. He's putting together a string of very good scores. So I'm happy with that. Jordan Clark as well. He recovered it. He's recovered it pretty well from that Geelong game with a 119 and a 129. I think he'll be a very good defender. And I wouldn't say he's a pod, but he's low owned. He's 12% owned. I think the 12% that do have him will be very happy with the scores he has put out. Then we go to Dan Houston, which a very, very disappointing game. I knew he was a trap. I think a lot of us knew he was a trap, but we just willingly walked right into it. And he popped out a 61 because Jeremy Howe and Darcy Moore came back and affected his usage of the ball. And Darcy Moore's gone back out, so that might positively affect him. And I've seen people already trading him out. I think I'm going to give him a week or two just to prove that he is truly a spud. But it was not a good score, especially when the likes of Worrell scored more with 95, and the player I was supposed to bring in and the player who I planned to bring in my trade video, Jack Watkins, outscored him. So a really annoying watch, that Collingwood game. And Josh Lindsay, the last player in my backline who actually played, we didn't expect he was going to play, but he came in and he's dropped to 70, which is amazing. His cash gen is now well and truly starting. I think he's going to be starting as well. He looks to have put himself in that halfback line. It looks like he's made up for that somewhat lowly game against the Gold Coast Suns. And for those of you who already traded him out, unlucky, but I'm glad I've kept him. Then, of course, we had Lockie Jakes, Jai Sarong, Michael Selwood not playing. Zane and Zakostelski, of course, didn't get named, with Darcy Gardner coming back. But now Darcy Gardner is injured with a shoulder injury for what looks like a couple months. So Zakostelski should come back in. And hopefully with Sam Draper's woeful performance, he can also get some more ruck time. And maybe they send Sam Draper back to the VFL for a bit to just get better and find some more form. And hopefully that means Zakostelski can get some room. Moving on to the midfield. Zach Butters with the captaincy. He got 126, and I think I'll leave Zach Butters for now because I want to talk about the vice captain, Tristan Cherry. And we all know what happened. We all know about that incident where Tristan Cherry, after getting knocked in the head, decided to wipe some blood from his nose on Andy McGrath's face. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know why he did that, and it's a disgusting look. And not only has he now potentially got himself suspended for God knows how long, he also chucked out a stinker. He got 68 when many of us were expecting him to go 168. And at least I wasn't one of the poor souls that had him captained after a Jackson VC or even a Daycross VC and they didn't take it. But it's still a horrible score for someone who I traded in. And he's looking like he's going to be a trade out. I think a lot of people are trading him out. The suspension could be anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, I've heard. And it's just going to be a really, really hard hold. So going back to Zach Butters, a 126, it was a pretty good score. And if we look at his quarter splits, it was the definition of consistency. We scroll down 30, 29, 34, 33. A solid 30 every single quarter is what we want to see from a player like Zach Butters, who we know is going to average 120 for the year. Someone else we know who's going to average at least 120 is Nick Dacos, who scored 150 against the Giants. And the Giants are actually shaping up to be pretty good opponents for mids. Because, of course, we had Marcus Bontempelli, who scored quite well against them in round 2. In round 1, sorry. With a 160. I think Naz scored well against them in round 2. So, it could be a good matchup for mids. So, keep that in mind if you're looking at your VCs. But Nick Dacos, an amazing score. This is why we picked him, because we know he has a ceiling like this. He's playing now Brisbane at the Gabba, which last time we played Brisbane at the Gabba, he got 172. So if you don't have him, make sure to get him in. You have a free pass now if you have Sherry. And he's going to be one of the best players in Supercoach this year. Someone who's not going to be one of the best players in Supercoach, not by a long shot, is Darcy Parish, who I think the game's gone past him. I think he just looks lost. He was quite poor in that game. If we look at his time on ground, 70%, disposal efficiency, 68%. He just wasn't able to get that much of the ball. Gave away free. Not really any clangers, but it was a poor game from him. And he just wasn't able to string it together consistently. Heat map all over the place, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I just think they have so many better options than Darcy Parish. If we look at CBAs, it was 68%. And he only got 69. He only got 67. You want your CBAs to be less than your points scored, I think. And I think Essendon will realise they need to give Zach Merritt more CBAs because he's their better user. And that's going to impact Parish. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Parish gets dropped. And when the likes of Sharp comes back, maybe a Sullivan Roby comes in from the VFL because he's been looking good. I just think Darcy Parish's career is at the tail end. We took the gamble on him because we thought he might be back to his best, but he's not. And another mid-pricer who was disappointed is Tanner Bruin. But Tanner Bruin, I'm willing to cut him some slack because he had a head knock at the start of the game. And if we look at his quarter splits from the Cats Crows game, he was looking pretty good for the first quarter. Scroll down, he had 26 in the first quarter, he had 22 in basically the first half of the first quarter, I think, before he came off with that head knock. But he just wasn't able to sustain it. A 6, an 18, and a -3. And I hope he can bounce back. If he doesn't, I do have room for him in my trade plans for next round, but I think he's definitely a hold for this round, especially considering his break-even's still pretty low. And if we look at someone like a Parish's break-even's 71. So he's not going to generate any more cash. And Tanner Bruin, I think he's definitely a hold. And because if we look at his previous scores, it's not like he's dropped 3 80s in a row. He's dropped a 91 and 110 against 2 good opponents. Sam Grill, I was a bit worried with him after that last score of 43 against Gold Coast, but he's bounced back against Freo, and I think he's definitely cemented himself in that Richmond half-back line. Jagger Smith, this is, I think, what we will expect from him every single week. A solid 90. 88 against Melbourne, he had a ripping first quarter, if I remember correctly. But then again, as the Blues did, he sort of just faltered off towards the end. 42 in the first quarter, then 13, 18, 15. I mean, not bad quarters by any stretch, but not what we hoped he would have gotten given this 42. Still a good score. Still rose up by 86k, the highest riser for this round. He'll be a good cash cow. Will be a good M8 option for a long while. Jack Carroll, I mean, we pretty much expected this from him, a solid 40 score. I shouldn't say solid because it's not as good score. And I think he's a trade out for a lot of people. He's come in, he's made basically that 60k that we wanted him to make. And I think there is just a lot better options, of course. A lot of us were only able to get one of Cook and Watkins, so I think Carroll will be traded for the other one because both of them did quite well. And he's going on to his bye, and so I don't think there's any better time to trade him out. Tumble Myers is definitely not a trade out because he's just risen by 78k. Another 85, I think he's another one similar to Jagger Smith that we can expect a 70 to 80 from. It was a good showing from him in a game where they ultimately won. If we look at his heat map, it was pretty much along this wing half-back line. Good time on ground, good tog, good time on ground, good efficiency. We like to see that from him. That definitely looks like he's cemented a spot. Tristan Cherry we touched on, a very disappointing score. Luke Jackson, a 108. We would have expected more from him against a team such as Richmond, but Sean Darcy had a pretty good game. He probably won't have a good game every week. And Jackson did spend quite a bit of time down forward. He also was recovering from an injury during training, so that might have hampered his score. If we look at his heat map, it was quite a lot of it in the forward. In fact, he had no possessions inside the centre square. Hopefully this is good for his potential forward DPP, because if he gets forward DPP, he is 100% a keeper. If not, he's a good chance at being a ruck primo, but I wouldn't say he's up at that top 2, top 3 bracket. I'd say he would be 4th for me. But also, we look at his stats. 47% disposal efficiency was poor, 6 clangers, and then 1 goal, 4. So there is a lot of improvement on this score. If he just kicked 2 of those goals, he would have gotten up to 120. If he mopped that up to around about 60%, he would have been 30, 130. And so it was a down game from Jackson, and he definitely could have gotten to that 130 mark, which we want him to get to. Up against Adelaide and then Collingwood and then West Coast. It's a pretty good run for rucks. You got McAndrew, you got Steen and Cameron, and then you've got Matthew Flynn. English didn't play. Harry Sheasel this round, of course, from the thumbnail, was the good, the bad, and the ugly. Harry Sheasel was one of the good players. Of course, him and Dacos, the 2 highest scorers for my team. And Sheasel just put out the score we knew the North players, the North primos, I should say, should have gotten against Essendon. Essendon are going to be the team that everyone scores highly against, I think, and Sheasel just proved it. 145, he was amazing this game. A big bounce back from last game where he got, I think, 41 touches and only got a 124. He got 33. He was a lot more impactful. He had 11 marks, 5 tackles, 9 contested possessions, 88% disposal efficiency really helped him. And only 1 score assist. I think his score involvements was 7, a bit more, but there's still room to improve, I think, for this score. These aren't unreachable stats for him every single week, and so he could definitely be looking at this 120 average. Sam Flanders is someone who I'm starting to get less and less confident that he can average around about a 110 like he did in 2024. Of course, we all knew there was going to be some settling in time for the St Kilda Football Club and all their new recruits. He hasn't really set the world alight with any of his scores. Of course, he got a 104 against Melbourne, but if we look at him in 2024, we know what he's capable of. We know that he was able to average 119 and he was able to light up the page with 120s and 130s. We look at all these scores, we know what he can do if he's given that time. So we look at his stats. He was pretty high for the Saints. He just wasn't able to accumulate the ball like he did in the Suns in 2024. Go down. He was 42% CBAs. And hopefully Hugo Garcia can stop hogging all the CBAs and give Sam Flanders a bit more turn there. And I still think he can average 100. And I still think he will be a hold until his bye probably. But it is concerning that we haven't been able to get that much more from him. Connor Buderick had a bye. Braden Cook, somehow the highest scorer from my trade-ins. And I'm going to introduce something that I'm going to call the trade-in ratings that I'm going to do every round to just evaluate how my rookies went. I'm going to do it for last round as well. So, of course, last round we had the Bonds. We had Luke Jackson. And we had Milan Murdoch. And so, for the Bont, I think it's pretty simple. He scored 141. I'm going to give him an A+. It was an amazing game from him. Luke Jackson, I think he scored a 119. I will check that. 113 against Melbourne. I'm going to give it an A. I think, especially given what all the other rucks scored that round. Jackson was a good score, but we would have liked it to be a bit better. And Milan Murdoch, despite his good score, I'm going to give a B+, because, of course, he got injured, which was not ideal. Now, for the trade-ins this week. This week, I traded in Sherry, traded in Houston, and I traded in Braden Cook. Sherry is getting a big fat F. It was a horrible game. Not only did he chuck out a stinker, he got himself suspended for the foreseeable future. Dan Houston, I want to give an F, but he's going to be playing next round. And so for that, I'm going to give him a D-, the lowest score I can give him without giving him an F. It was a horrible game. Horrible game. But Braden Cook, I'm going to give a solid A. It was a very, very, very solid game from him, I think. For those of us who were a bit concerned that he played wing, I think this just showed that he can definitely score well against good teams. He's gotten an average of 78 against Collingwood, Western Bulldogs, and Geelong. 3 good teams. And if we look at his quarter splits, he was looking on for a ton. Especially after the third quarter. He scored 41 in the third quarter after 23 and 17. We're thinking he's 81 at 3/4 time. Definitely going to ton up. He got -1. And I think he was victim of a lot of other players, especially McAndrew as well, that we will talk about. Because Bailey Smith got 172. And he was definitely stealing a lot of points from a lot of other people. Which was a shame. But it definitely showed that Braden Cook can be a very good on-field scorer. Devin Robinson, he was tagging Zach Butters, and I hate when this happens in Supercoach, when one of your players is tagging one of your other players, because it's just hurts both of their scorings. I'm sure if Devin Robinson wasn't tagging Zach Butters, he would have at least gotten an 80. Butters would have at least gotten a 140. But it has happened, and also he might get suspended as well because he slung Butters to the ground. And at that moment I almost slammed my head on the table because I was thinking Sherry's out, Butters might be out with a concussion now, and Devrob might be suspended. Of course, Zach Butters is fine. Hopefully that plays well in Dev Robinson's case, but we'll have to wait until Wednesday for that. Mateus Philippou with a 69. A very good score. Very nice number. And a lot of us traded him out. I was luckily one who didn't. If we look at his selections, started off at 111, 112k selections, and he's dropped down to about 96,000. And I think he's definitely shown that he can still get to that 300k mark. If we look at his stats, his time on ground was still 60. He lost 11 points to scaling. and he got 40% CBAs. I think it was pretty good from him. He gets a week off, and hopefully this time on ground can rise up a bit, because if he's scoring 60s, or if he's scoring 69s with 60% time on ground, when he's getting 80% time on ground, he could be scoring 100s. And I think we all know that he has a massive ceiling, the poo. And we just really want to see him reach that ceiling. Lachlan McAndrew, my flex, the last position on my team, with his 68. As I said before with Cook, he was a bit of a victim of Bailey Smith stealing all his points. But it was still a solid showing. He's risen up by 73k. He looks like he's going to get to that 300, 350 mark if he keeps scoring around about these 80s. And so with that, we will move on to trade talks. And I am going to bring my trade targets board over. And I've updated some of it. For the targets, I've added Callahan and Holmes for primos, because if we look at those two, Callahan got 124. I think his average is definitely hurt by that score in round 1. He also didn't get a good score against St Kilda, but against the Dogs, who are really restrictive of midfielders, and Collingwood, he's gotten 120s. He's also quite low owned at 3.4%. That's probably going to rise after next round, but I just think he's a good pod, and he's got a really good buy. Then we also have Max Holmes, who's averaging 121. He's scored a 121, and if we look at his run, he's got Hawthorn and West Coast. A good run for mids. We've seen how good the mids have done against West Coast, and there's a lot of scoring for him. I think he can definitely average around about 115, 116. And he's 10% owned. And for my trade-ins, I want to prioritize lesser owned players. Because if we looked at percentage ownership for all these players, I have quite a lot of the highly owned players. I only am missing Dyson Sharp in the top 25, and then Christian Petrarca, of course, injured, and then I'm missing Willem Dersma in the top, basically 30. The lowest owned player I have is Jordan Clark at 11%, which I think is a pretty good pod, but I want more pods. And if I can get a Max Holmes at 10%, of course, this is going to rise dramatically. As you can see, a lot of people are already trading him in, but I think a lot of people will be prioritizing Marcus Bontempelli or Nick Dacos, who I already have. Then, if you keep scrolling down, you scroll down to 3.4%, of course, we said before, Finn Callahan is here. This would be an amazing pod to have, and if he wasn't on his buy, I would 100% bring him in. Unfortunately, he is on his buy, and so we have to look back at the board. I think also for rookies, if we look at the rookies, a lot of them disappointed. Filter below 3 matches, and we shrink it down to about 180 or so. A lot of the rookies disappointed. You had Hugh Bond, a good score. I'm not really sure how many of us will be picking him up. I don't think we really need defensive rookies at the moment. Oscar Steen, he's only played 1 game, definitely for next round. Josh Lindsay, if you jumped off him, I wouldn't say it's too late to jump back on. It would hurt, of course, but he's definitely going to rise a lot in price. Of course, we had Will Brodie, Harry Schoenberg, James Lee, Josh Lai, Taylor Byrne, Jacob Farrow, Finn Barmailey, Archer Daywicks, all have played their first game, all be eligible for the bubble next round. And then we look at the rookies who have played 2 games. Lincoln McCarthy, a 69, it's all right, but I'm not going there. McKelty Lafau, who was on the trade targets board, he scored a 44, and I think a lot of us were really happy with that 72 he scored against Gold Coast, but I don't think we're going to see this level of scoring from him. He's a forward for Richmond. He's not going to score that well. Chase Jones as well is one I was really hot on, and he disappointed. He was only managed to get a 38. Still did better than Christopher Sherry, who only got a 31. And so I think both of these guys, I think, are busts. I don't think they're going to generate that much cash. Unlucky for the people who jumped early on them. This is why you don't really jump early on rookies. Milan Murdoch was a special case for me, but then ultimately he got injured, so it wasn't the right move. So I just think you have to wait for these players to be on their bubbles. And this is very, very important for Oscar Steen, because a lot of people are going to jump on him. And a lot of people already have. I just think play it safe, wait an extra round, and see what happens. If you want to jump on a ruck rookie, wait till team sheets, because Zane Zakostelski could get named. But, of course, Oscar Steen does look like he's got that job security for anyone who does want to pick him up. And then if we look back at the trade block of players I was going to trade out, I think it's safe to say we can remove Josh Lindsay and we can remove Mateus Philippou from this list. And I added Leo Lombard before I started recording. And so it leaves us with the trade block of Parrish and Carroll. And I think, as much as I hate to say it, I might also add Sherry to this, because depending on how long he's suspended for, I think for me it's 2 weeks if he's suspended for 2 weeks or less. If he's suspended for 2 or less weeks, I might keep him. But I just think, because I can keep him actually. I can move him to R3. I've still got Jackson, English, McAndrew, but it hurts to hold this much cash on the bench, as well as quite a bit of cash on field. Because if we look at the 2 other trades I'm going to do, Parrish is gone and Carroll is gone. And for them, I think I'm going to pick up 2 rookies in Jake Rogers and Jack Watkins. I think Jake Rogers, I hope, is one that a lot of people will sleep on, because, of course, he didn't score last round. But when he has played, he has scored quite well. He got a 96 against West Coast. He got a 70 against Richmond. And those were with Track on the field. I think with Track not playing, he should hopefully get some more centre bounces, because I think he is a capable midfielder. But, of course, if Bailey Humphrey goes and fills that in, or not because he's suspended, I forgot about that, it frees up a lot more space in the forward line for him. And we go back to a lot of his... If we go back to his games, we can see that a lot of his points are generated from score assists. He's got 3 score assists this game, 5 score involvements for someone who only got 9 touches. And he got 9 touches and got a 70 off 64% time on ground. That is going to improve 100% because Track is going to be off. And we look at the West Coast game. Of course, he got the 96, 4 score assists, 9 score involvements of 15 disposals with only 63% time on ground. So he's getting good scores with low time on ground. And with Track out, of course, Took Miller will probably get some more mid-time. Bailey Humphrey will get more mid-time when he comes back in. And Jake Rogers should be scoring a lot better. Of course, if Bailey Humphrey does come back, does it affect Jake Rogers' spot in the team? I don't think so, because, of course, Track is out now. And Bailey Smith and Bailey Humphrey and Christian Petrarca are basically the same player. And so I think Jake Rogers will be a good scorer. I think if he's scoring a good 75 a game, which is what he's shown he can score, I'll boot up Supercoach Projector. If he averages a good 75, he'll get up to that 350, 370k mark by his buy. If he averages 80, then it is 380. And if he averages 83, which is basically what he's been averaging now, he'll get up to 400. And so if we can get that type of cash gen from Jake Rogers, who I think he was drafted in 2022, so he's been in the system for 3 years, and I think this might be actually a contract year for him, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's definitely got a lot to play for, and is still a tremendous talent. I think top 20 pick, should score well. And then Jack Watkins is a player I should have picked last week instead of Dan Houston. And if I picked him ahead of Dan Houston, as you can see from the amount of cash I have, I probably would be able to get another primo in this week. But Jack Watkins, he looked pretty good against the West Coast Eagles, got a 69. At points, he was looking like he was going to ton up. If we look at his splits, he started off the game really, really hot. 32 in the first quarter. Then he got a 14, 13, 10. Faltered off a bit, but that's, of course, when the Eagles started clawing their way back. Big up the Eagles, by the way. What a win against the Power. I watched pretty much every minute of that game, despite Kelly Underwood's annoying commentary. A very good win for the Eagles. But Jack Watkins, I think, he's definitely still a pickup. It's not too late. Still going to make 44k this week if he scores a 50. And we go back to the projections. If he scores a 70, which I think he definitely can, given these levels of scoring. If he scores a 72, let's say, he will get up to about 350 by SPY, which is the 200k we need from him, basically. And I think if you're trading a player in, you want them to make at least 200k. So that's 100k for the trade in, 100k for the trade out. Ideally, of course, if it's a player like Milan Murdoch, or if it's a player like Oscar Steen, you'd want them to get 300k, because, of course, Milan Murdoch can definitely get to 400k when he comes back. He could get there in 4 rounds, basically. But, because I've done some calculations, and I'll show them to you now. Bring up the calculator. If you want a team of full primos, let's say each primo is worth 610k, because, of course, the lower price of the primos in the forward line are going to offset the higher ones from the midfields. Times that by 23, because you want all of your players, including your flex, to be primos. That is $14 million. Then let's say you've got, I'll go overs on this, 200k per rookie on the bench. Times that by 8 spots. And then you add that to the, I think it was this. That's 15 million, basically. 15.5 million your team needs to be worth. If we go back to the homepage, my team is worth 8 or 10.8 mil. And I think a lot of teams are pretty much around this boat, give or take 200k. And so I think the requirement for us to be able to end the year competitively is to get to around this 15 million mark. And that's why getting cash gen in now is so good, because we have so much good cash cows. We have Lockie Jakes averaging 78. We have Josh Lindsay averaging 65. We have Jagger Smith potentially averaging 100, as well as Milan Murdoch. Tom Myers is averaging 78. You've got Devin Robertson before this round averaging 100. You've got Jake Rogers. Hopefully he can maintain that average of 83. Todd Marshall averaging an 81.5. Lachlan McKendry averaging basically 80. We have a lot of good cash generation. And we need to make sure we get every single one of those cash cows, because, of course, we want to get to this 15 million mark. And there will be people who have dead rookies on the bench. They might have a Finn McRae or a Kalani White. And sure, they'll score well off the bat, but they won't be able to recover it. If we look at the top player for this round, of course, I think it was a bit dodgy with this guy because, of course, he has no bench rookies and he started around late. If we look at a player like this, like Bud Spuds, who's 692, he's pretty high up there in total rankings. He's got a good team, don't get me wrong, but he's got Max Kondogiannis, He's got Dyson Sharp, Jack Carroll. He's got Kalani White. He's got Will Lewis. It's a lot of missing cash gen. And I think this person is definitely someone a lot of us could hopefully catch. Of course, if you are Bud Spuds, congrats. You've done really well so far. Someone else like Flagmantle. He's got Mitch Marsh, Knight Caddy, Oliver Hannaford, Zeke and Toby Travalia, Brandon Walker. What is this team? But a lot of us will be able to catch teams like this. If we look at the top team, of course, the top team's probably pretty good. But in saying that, he's got Wade Dirksen, he's got Patrick Said, he's got Liam Reedy, and he's got Kalani White. He's missing a lot of good cash generation options. And sure, these guys are starting well off the bat. But they're going to be catchable if we have all our cash gen sorted in these first couple rounds. So I think, especially in the buys, if you're a team like me who doesn't have any Giants primos and who only has Flanders, Sinclair, and Pooh out, you can hold a couple 100K to just make sure you get these Watkins, you get the Cooks, get the Rogers. You can hold that cash just to make sure you get your cash cows sorted. Because cash generation, of course, is the biggest part of this game, as I've said. And I think the final trade, it's a shame, but I'm going to have to use my third boost. I'm going to have to get Tristan Cherry out, move Zane Zakostelski back to R3, Sam Grill goes back up, and if we pull out the trade targets, Callahan and Ash are not options, of course, because they're on their bye. Josh Worrell, I think if I were to get him, it would have been last round, and I probably should have got him last round, which leaves Max Holmes. I think Max Holmes is going to be a very, very solid scorer, and he's got a good run. He's got Hawthorn, who don't really have that many mids. He's got West Coast. Then he's got Bulldogs, but it's at GHNBA. And I think he has shown he can score well against the Dogs. He got 128 last game against them. And I think Max Holmes is just a very, very solid midfielder. He's improving. And he should be hopefully a good pod if his ownership stays low, although a lot of people are trading him in. And it has me holding 321k for next round, where I could use it a number of different ways. Of course, I'm going to look at the trade block. Of course, Parrish and Carroll are out. So is Sherry. And I think Lombard is definitely one I'm going to give one more round to. And if he doesn't perform, he's becoming Oscar Steen. So I'm going to add Steen to this list. Of course, Watkins and Rogers are gone. Holmes is now in my team. And I'm also going to add to the trade block, after their recent performances, Tanner Bruin and Connor Buderick, less so, but he still had a pretty disappointing last couple games, you could say. And for someone of this 300k price tag, you want them to be scoring around about these 90 scores, not 80. 80, you can get that from rookie, as we have seen. And so I'm going to put Buderick on this chopping block, especially given he's versing Essendon. If he doesn't score at least a 90 in this game, I think he might be out of my team, because his cash generation is running a bit dry. And with this 321k, I can attach it to any of these players. A Bruin, a Buderick, and then I'm also going to add a Houston. I could add this 321k to any of these players and turn them into a premium. And even Tanner Bruin, even though he is a forward because I've got Braden Cook in my midfield, I can swing him down and then I can swing Grill down. I've got a lot of DPP now. I can move pretty much anyone anywhere. And so I think next round, I want to get Callahan, but I don't want to be hamstrung by having too many primo mids. Because if I optimize this now, I've got no midfielders out. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primo mids. And I don't want to be hamstrung by having too many of these mids, because our midfield rookies, the top couple are looking pretty good. Jagger Smith, Tom Myers, and Milan Murdoch, once he comes back in, are all looking like really fieldable options. And they're all looking like better options than Selwood and Sarong and maybe Grill. And so I think next round, if I were to get any one of these 3 premiums, it would be Lockie Ash, because of course he's a defender. He's got that good buy in round, I think 13 or 14 with just Richmond. But depending on how owned Ash is and how many people are trading Callaghan in after this round, I could be tempted to go him. But this is the team, I think, this is what the team should be going into round 4. Of course, we don't know what Tristan Cherry is going to get suspended. We don't know how long Tristan Cherry is going to be suspended for, or if Devon Robinson's going to be suspended. I'm also going to move Todd Marshall on field. And for my captaincies for this round, it's given me Butters and Bont. And I'm just going to switch this around, of course, because I think both are very good captains. You've got Butters against Richmond, and you've got Bont against Essendon. And of course, Butters plays on Saturday, Bont plays on Sunday. Right, so I think a Butters VC into Bont is a very safe move. Other options, of course, you could go the VC on Nick Dacos. You could go it on Harry Sheasel. You could go risky on a Luke Jackson against a Lachlan Candrew. Or if you have a Brodie Grundy. If you have Brodie Grundy, very good VC option against West Coast Eagles. Then, of course, Noah Anderson maybe against Melbourne. Max Holmes against Hawthorn. There are a lot of good options for captaincies, I think, this round. Just got to make sure you get the right one. And so this is it. This is the team. I will still upload a fantasy video, but it will be on Thursday because my fantasy did even worse than Supercoach. Also on Thursday, I'm going to upload my final trades video, which will have, of course, I will look through the injury list. I will go through Tristan Cherry's suspension. So if you want to be notified when that comes out, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Happy coaching.